Hello, I'm Jyotika. Welcome to Excelling Psychology. In today's class, we will learn how to answer paper 1 for UK AQA Psychology A levels curriculum. This lesson will be useful to International Psychology Oxford AQA students also because most of the topics are overlapping in both syllabus. In this lesson, I will explain to you how to write the answers, that is, how to read the questions correctly, to understand what content to cover, how to organize your answers. So, as we go about, I'll keep explaining to you and I'll keep making outlines of the answers. I'll keep jotting down some bullet points that you can use as a framework to develop your answers. However, if you want full answers for the questions, like you want perfect model answers which can help you get A star, then I am uploading a PDF file on my website, the link for which I am giving in the description box and the pinned comment below. So you can download the model answers from there. I won't be writing the full model answers in this video. Also, I will divide this lesson into two parts. In the present video, I will cover the first two sections, social influence and memory. In the next video, I'll cover the next two sections, attachment and psychopathology. Before I begin discussing, I want you to know that I'm a school teacher and private tutor for A level psychology since the past 10 plus years. So, if you want to schedule your psychology classes with me so that you can get your A and A star grades, you can contact me on my phone number and email ID that I'm leaving in the pinned comment and description box below. If you want me to check papers that you're practicing, give you feedback, so you just want some correspondence work, I'm available for that also. You can contact me on the same email ID or phone number. Okay, so let's begin with this lesson. For the first section, social influence, we can see in May 2025, they have asked a 2-marker first. So let's see how to approach that question. They've asked what is meant by flexibility in the context of minority influence. There are a lot of possibilities of what you can cover in this type of question, but one thing is fixed. Whenever they ask you what is meant by something to outline or explain something, always begin with the definition. So your first point in this case should be the definition of flexibility. Next point, because you have 2 marks after all, you need to justify 2 marks. Definition justifies only 1 mark. For the next point, you can give any elaboration or example. Let's consider what elaboration or example can be given. You could contrast flexibility with any other strategies that are there for minority influence, say with consistency. So you can just explain how flexibility is different from consistency. Alternatively, you can give an example. So you could say in the real world where flexibility has been seen, or a hypothetical example of how a minority group can show flexibility in its position. The most frequent mistake made here is just to give the definition of flexibility and leave it at that, expecting 2 marks. You don't get 2 marks for giving only 1 point. You need to give 2 unique points to get 2 marks. What I mean by this is, not only you need to give 2 points, but 1 point should not merely be a repetition of the other. So you define what flexibility is and then you just put it in different words. Not that way. You define what it is and you give something different from the definition. As I said, either a contrast or an example. That can get you 2 marks. What type of question? The command term here is what, is always purely AO1 descriptive. So you need not evaluate in any way. You must not give any strength or weakness or flexibility as a strategy, like is it effective or not. You're not to evaluate that. That is also one mistake which students make. Don't get into strengths and weaknesses of flexibility. Also, there is no stem, no scenario to which you need to apply. So just avoid trying to do any sort of application for this question. So this is very straightforward, easy to score. When it comes to definition of flexibility, depends which textbook you have learnt it from, but make sure you give good terminology. Ideally, memorize the definition and write it. If you're very good at using terminology yourself and you don't tend to use casual language while writing, you can write in your words. Otherwise, just learn by heart from the textbook and write, because definitions you don't score well unless you use good language. What I mean by that is, most of you would say that flexibility is a negotiation strategy, with the minority being receptive of some changes required in its position. in line with what the majority is demanding. So if you write it this way, correct, you get 1 mark. But if you use very loose, casual language, as if you're conversing with someone, so you say flexibility means they should be ready to change their position, or they should not be very stubborn about their position. That might not get you 1 mark, depends exactly how you're writing, but unlikely it will get you 1 mark because you're not using good terms. Good terms, I mean negotiation, majority opinion, willingness to change. These are good terms. So make sure you're using these type of terms when you define. For if you're giving an elaboration point, you could contrast it with consistency, as I mentioned earlier. So consistency means that, in the face of hardships also, sticking to one's viewpoint and not changing one's viewpoint just because hardships have to be endured. Whereas flexibility means being open to negotiation upon demands from the majority, being willing to change some standpoints. So that way you can draw contrast, or as I mentioned earlier, you could give an example. A hypothetical example could be something like, let's say there are animal right activists and they believe that animals should not be sacrificed for any cause whatsoever, but then to have their say and to get the majority to agree with some of their terms, they agree that in very essential industries, say like medicine, it's okay to do some testing on animals to check whether the medicines will not cause any side effects to humans. So to that extent, they agree that animals have to be sacrificed. So there they are showing flexibility in their position. Alternatively, if you've learned of any real life example where the minority has shown flexibility, you could give that also as an example. Right now, I'm not able to bring to mind anything, but if you've learned in your textbook, that would be good if you could give a real life example. Let's come to the next question. Outline the authoritarian personality as an explanation for obedience. Outline is purely an AO1 command term, and the key thing here, I would say, is to look at how many marks have been assigned, because as such, students learn things like authoritarian personality very well. After all, we expect only one of those explanations to be asked. If it were for 2 marks, just straightforward definition and again elaboration or example like we did for the previous question. But here, because it's for 4 marks, you need to consider besides definition what would be 2-3 points more that you would give. There is lots. Let's brainstorm quickly what else we can give, as long as we don't get into strengths and weaknesses, because it's not an AO3 command term. As long as we stick to just describing what we have learned in the textbook, we can give examples again. So after definition, there could be an example of how a person who has an authoritarian personality tends to behave. You could give reasoning for why people tend to have an authoritarian personality. So you could link it to parenting and upbringing. You could link it to Adorno's F scale, how authoritarian personality is measured. You could contrast it with other possible explanations of obedience, such as legitimacy of authority, for example. The straightforward way of going about 4 marks, like the easiest way in my opinion is what, where, why, who, how. Think of all those possibilities. Definitely you will come up with 4 unique points. That is only what we have jotted down right now. Okay, so quickly I'll just make the bullet points. Like there's nothing more to discuss in this. Just make sure you're having 4 unique points to justify 4 marks. Good practice is always beginning with the definition. And definition you must give in good terms. So authoritarian personality is dispositional tendency to respect authority figures unconditionally and to despise those who go against commands given by authority figures. Something to that effect will be your definition. As I've said, if you're not able to write very well, just memorize the definitions. For example, you could suggest, again, if you want to take a real life example, Milgram study. There were some participants, not all of them, of course, situational explanation was stronger in that, but some of them who did admit to just obeying the experimenter into giving the electric shocks to the innocent learner because they felt that authority should not be challenged or questioned. They said things like the experimenter knew better than them or was in a better position than them to decide what should be done in that situation, indicating that they believed in unconditional obedience and that they had an authoritarian personality. So that could be an example, or you could give a hypothetical one that someone who has this personality could go to the extent of torturing others, harassing others, just because an authority figure has instructed them to do so. You could give it that way also. Alternatively, along with this, you could give the reason for why people have authoritarian personality. It generally has to do with authoritarian parenting. And please define what authoritarian parenting is, like what that style is exactly. So it is a very punitive parenting style whereby even slight mistakes by a child are punished severely, and the child is disciplined through forceful techniques, including like corporal punishment. So there is no forgiveness given to the child, or no discussions are there are done with the child as to explain what his mistakes are. Rather, strict punishment is used to discipline the child. So something to that effect you can explain. So when children undergo this type of parenting, they come to believe that uh, not obeying an authority figure like a parent should never go without punishment, and that's why they become authoritarian in nature. So you could explain that way. I think the most popular elaboration would be to talk about Adorno. After all, he's the one who's given the theory, and he's prepared the F scale, also the fascism scale, which can be used to measure the degree of authoritarianism in a person, and then to correlate that with how obedient they are in their behaviors. You could also give an example of any of Adorno's study or any other study where the scale has been used, like the replication of Milgram's study, in which Adorno himself used this scale and showed how many people who do obey and give electric shocks tend to have this F fascist or authoritarian type of personality. As I said, another possible point would be contrasting with other explanations. Most probably, you contrast it with legitimacy of authority. So, you could just define what legitimacy of authority is, believing that the authority figure has a legal right in that situation, or has been conferred that right by society to take charge of the situation and instruct what should be done in that. And that's why following the authority figure rather than due to one's own dispositional traits. I've given more than 4 points here. Each bullet point here is a unique point. Even the sub bullet point, which is there, would count as a separate point. So any four of these you could give, or any relevant point which does relate in some way to authoritarian personality, it will count for towards your 4 marks. Like literally, they're going to count how many AO1 points are there and are correct, and they're going to give you 4 marks. For these smaller types of answers, they don't have any particular rubric as such. So very rarely they do. So it's just going to be counting how many unique AO1 points are there. Even if there is a rubric, in effect, it becomes that only. So then you can structure accordingly. Also, when I say that you can contrast with some other definition, like this point, or even in the previous I had mentioned you can contrast with consistency, just keep one thing in mind, that you keep linking back to what is actually asked in the question. They've asked you for authoritarian personality. So if you're contrasting with legitimacy of authority, don't give that definition for its own sake, like this is legitimacy of authority. The examiner won't be able to see what is the relation, why have you written it under authoritarian personality, like did you not understand the question. So make sure you signpost and say something like this is different from legitimacy of authority, which is, and then explain what legitimacy of authority is. Make sure any point you make in any answer, this is true for short as well as long answers, any point you make always links back to the question asked, is always relevant to the question that has been asked. Let's look at the next question. Outline one limitation of authoritarian personality as an explanation for obedience. Anytime in a question, like even if it's a short question, terms like strength, limitation, merit, demerit, strength, weakness are there, it becomes AO3, evaluation. For 2 marks per se, you don't need to use Peel format and give very elaboratively, even if you give in 2 sentences, like just, name the weakness and just expand on it, like elaborate on it a little, that's enough. But if you want to follow the Peel format, you can just make sure you jot down quickly. Let's brainstorm what are some possible limitations first, because of course there are multiple. One which immediately comes to mind is it is reductionist. It has a very dispositional way of explaining obedience, whereas there are very strong situational factors. Best example coming from Milgram, how most people obeyed in the shock experiment, indicating that there is situational pressure rather than one's own personality that results in obedience. So, definitely, that's a criticism. You could give any study which has, of course, Milgram study. Besides that, also any study which has, say, made use of the F scale, and they haven't been able to establish that fascism is the reason for obedience. You could give any study of that type. Right now, in my mind, besides Milgram study, no other studies coming. But if you have learned any such study, definitely give that. Only make sure when you're giving it's just for 2 marks. Results are key. So make sure you write about the result more than aim or procedure of the study that can deviate from what is being asked. Other possible weaknesses are blaming of individuals, like we can talk about social sensitivity, especially if you are not taking only AS and you have taken uh, I'm sorry, A level psychology, like you're taking A2 also fully. In that case, you could talk about social sensitivity. That's one of your issues. Why it is socially sensitive? Because it can result in blaming individuals engaging in obedience and overlooking what social factors are contributing to developing a climate of obedience. So ultimately, society doesn't change its viewpoint, ends up blaming who are possible victims themselves of having to obey higher authority and doing things which were against their own consciousness. So you could give that as a limitation. It is also deterministic in nature. So again, if you take from issues and debates, why it is deterministic? Because we are saying that if someone has authoritarian parents, they are bound to be this way, like they are bound to develop an authoritarian personality, which is not necessarily the case. There are lots of people who have authoritarian parents and they choose or they use their free will not to develop that type of personality and to hold themselves accountable for any actions that they are doing. So I'm sure you can think of many evaluation points in this way. Just narrow down on the one which you think you can cover best. And what I mean by best is that you will be able to explain, at least in one concrete or explicit sentence, how it is a limitation of personality. So, my suggested way, let's take reductionism right now as the weakness, that's the easiest one, is to first name explicitly that one weakness is it is a reductionist explanation. And because it's just for 2 marks, I wouldn't go into a full peel format of writing. Rather, I would just say there are other possible explanations. For example, in Milgram's study, a very strong situational explanation, that of situational pressure to obey, was presented. And to make this more solid, I would say that vast majority of the participants obeyed to a very destructive level. If I remember the figures, that's even better. 26 out of 40 participants obeyed till the very last level of 450-volt shock they gave in that study, indicating that situational pressures can override dispositional factors in most cases. Again, if this is not enough for you and you need to see the complete answer, how to write a model answer, you can download from my website. I have pinned it in the description box below. Okay, so these were some of the shorter questions for social influence. Then this time in social influence, they're given a full 16 marker with an AO2. Now, this tends to become very detailed, and today I want to cover both sections. So, I will not go very thoroughly. I will explain to you how to meet all objectives. I won't go very thoroughly into it. If you want to see how to answer a 16 marker with AO2 STEM, I've covered it very elaborately on a previous video in my channel. I'll try to link it in the description box below. Otherwise, you can just go into the playlist or the previous videos and you'll find it very prominently. How to answer an AO316 marker with AO2 component. So just click on that video and I've given full details. What we need to do is whenever we are answering 16 markers and that STEM is there very prominently, as we are reading, we need to keep on marking out which concepts are being covered in this STEM. As and when we can identify immediately, we should start Not writing in the paper as such, jotting in our mind. Right now I'm writing to demonstrate to you. Otherwise, don't make any marks on your question paper in the exam hall. Okay, so I'll read the question. As I'm reading, whatever concepts I can identify that have been used in this scenario, I'll just keep noting them. You need to do that mentally. A parent toddler group meets for a trip to a soft play center. They choose to go to Mini World. Julie, one of the parents, thinks Mini World is overpriced and would rather go to Kids Cave. She doesn't say anything though, as all other parents seem keen on Mini World. Immediately, I can identify, even without looking at the question, that she's doing something that all other parents are saying to do, whereas it seems she doesn't agree with it herself. Typical conformity situation. Because there's a majority, there's a sizable number of parents who are doing something, and she's just going along with what they are doing. So, this is to do with conformity. I can take a quick look at the question. They've asked for explanations. Otherwise, also, I think it's very apparent that she is following because of NSI. Means immediately you need to note, because you have 1 minute per mark in this paper. 30 marks, 30 minutes for one section. So you can't afford to lose time into, first reading the situation very elaborate and then thinking about what must be there. If you've practiced well enough, this type of scenarios are given very frequently in the paper. NSI, ISI type of conformity. So immediately start noting it. Okay, so she's showing the NSI type of conformity. If instead they haven't, but if they would have asked us types of conformity, then you could start thinking about internalization, compliance. Here she's showing compliance. Right now, I'm not getting into it because it's not relevant. That's why I just showed you the question so that you just think as much as is relevant. They will give you marks in the paper even if you talk about compliance, internalization, identification. But I feel it's unnecessary. It's just about explanations, don't go into it unnecessarily. Okay, so she's showing conformity NSI. Why am I noting this? Because this helps me to know in AO1 also how much I need to cover. I can't cover everything about social influence in AO1. So in my mind, I know, okay, I'll have to define NSI, I'll have to define conformity. So my outline is becoming clear to me as I'm going through the question. Let's read further. Anthony always used to take his twins to Kids Cave. He has since joined the parents' toddler group. Anthony has heard the other parents talk about the play area at Mini World as being better than the one at Kids Cave. So even he's showing conformity. He now takes his twins to Mini World on the days the group does not meet. Even when they don't meet, he takes his children to Kids World. This is clearly ISI. If he was doing it just to show them, it would be NSI, but he's doing it even when he's not having an opportunity to show them. So that's ISI. Discuss two explanations for conformity. Refer to Julia and Anthony in your answer. Okay, needless to say, I think you know by now that these type of questions have three components: AO1, AO2, and AO3. AO1 descriptive, in which we just have to define and give a few points about what is NSI, ISI, that is worth 6 marks. So first let's brainstorm what we could give for AO1. What are the possibilities? Definitely definition of each. You can begin with the larger definition of conformity. That's a good way of beginning. Then defining what NSI, ISI are. As I said, you can get into types of conformity, but I don't believe that answer can reach full 16 marks because it shows you don't know as much about the explanation. That's why you're trying to compensate by bringing in the types. So in my opinion, just stick to the explanations. There's a lot to write anyways about NSI, ISI. Again, who, what, where, how, why. So when it comes to NSI, why does it happen, right? That is an easy way of elaborating. Why do people show NSI? No doubt in the definition you will mention approval and acceptance. But then why people have that need, you can link it to the social animal nature of human beings. So you can just explain why NSI occurs. You can give examples. Some students feel that if there is a STEM question in AO1, we can't give examples. Why not? You can give explanations not from the STEM but in real life or from studies that you have learned. So simple example would be in Milgram's study. Ash's study. NSI was the reason for conforming because the task was unambiguous. There's no doubt that participants knew what is the right answer, which was the correct matching line. Then why did they opt to agree with the group because of NSI. In fact, how I would suggest you introduce this example is first explain in which situations NSI and ISI is seen. So first talk about ambiguity of the situation. So first you begin with in ambiguous situations NSI is not seen. It is seen in unambiguous situations because people are not looking for information, rather they are looking for acceptance. Despite knowing the right position, they would side with the wrong one just out of fear of rejection. And then you can give the example of Ash's study. Roughly you can think about it. See, there's a rubric for marking 16 marker. It's not point by point, but roughly just think about it as 6 unique points for 6 marks, just as a rough guideline. Okay, one more thing. In the model answers, which I'm linking below, I have included commentary also. So my comments also the exam commentary. So how many words you should target, what should be your word count for AO1, AO2 and all that I have indicated in that document. Like I told you in this video, if I discuss everything, it's going to go beyond the scope of the video. So some of it you can get by downloading the document as well. Same way I would go about for ISI also. Defining it, then explaining why it happens because of need for correctness, desire to not be wrong. It happens in mostly ambiguous situations. So first I would explain like how it happens under ambiguity, and then just like I'm linking NSI to Ash's study, I would link this one to Genesis study, the bean jar study. I think that's the best example. Of course, any other studies that you know of, you could link to those also. Just keep in mind one thing for AO1. If you're giving only the studies, then to summarize as aim, procedure, results, conclusion will be good. But if you're doing it like me, like just giving the study as an example, then don't go to summarize it fully because it becomes excessive for AO1. In fact, let me just quickly make the bullet points for AO1 before proceeding to AO2. So what I'll do is first I'll define NSI. You can begin with the general definition of conformity. It is following the majority. I'm not doing that. I'm directly beginning with the explanation because I feel I have too many points about the explanations themselves. So NSI is the tendency to follow the majority for their approval out of fear of rejection. Then I would give the reason for why it occurs. Humans are social animals, so they want to align with others' positions so that they are not ostracized or eliminated from a social group, which could make their living difficult. So evolutionarily, it serves to keep human beings safe. And then I would link it to ambiguity. When tasks are unambiguous, that time generally NSI is seen because people know what the correct position is or the correct answer is. But despite that, they, out of fear of rejection, go along with what the majority is saying. And then I would link it to the Ash study. That Ash has demonstrated this by showing that even when participants knew the correct answer to which was the matching line, they gave the wrong one just because others confederates in the group were giving the wrong answer. Then I would in the same way lay out ISI. It is informational social influence, following what the majority is doing just out of the desire to be correct or right. Reason for it is just like humans have the natural tendency to not be rejected, they also have a natural tendency to not want to be wrong, the desire to always be correct. That is what motivates ISI. In terms of ambiguity, when situations are ambiguous, then ISI is seen. You could give some general real life examples also. For example, if one travels to another country for the first time, and they don't know what are the norms there, then because it's an ambiguous situation for them, they tend to follow whatever other people are doing, like how they eat, what mannerisms they show, how they greet each other. They follow those things because they actually believe that that is the right way of going about in that culture. But even better, I feel, is to give the example from Genesis study, the bean jar study, in which participants had to estimate how many beans were there in the jar. And because the situation was highly ambiguous, they, after a group discussion, tended to give that answer which the group had given. So they changed the answer accordingly. Okay, so this is how we can lay out AO1. I would call it a very focused approach. I haven't even given a general definition of conformity. They've asked me about explanations of conformity and I've elaborated only on that. Generally, full 16 marks are given for answers which are highly relevant to what is asked in the question. So that is the approach I've taken here. No general definitions, no unnecessarily getting into types of conformity. Though you can say that NSI leads to compliance, ISI leads to internalization. It's a credible point as long as you link it to explanations. It's just that it's not necessary right now. For AO2, key to scoring in AO2, which is worth 4 marks here, is to engage fully with the STEM. One, whatever points you're making, use because or use wording from the situation to answer. For example, if you say NSI is being seen in this situation, but you don't say who's showing that, you don't name Julie is the one who's showing NSI, or you don't explain why you're saying that she's showing NSI. Julie is showing NSI because, you're not going to get marks. So don't give general terms NSI seen, ISI seen. Who is showing it, where it is being seen, why you're saying that it's being seen. Explain thoroughly. Even better, link it to the definitions you've given before. Like instead of just taking the wording, Julie showing NSI because other parents seem keen on mini world, so she's also going there. It's correct. But you have defined NSI as following the majority. So using some terms from that definition and using some words from this scenario, explicitly link the two. Julie is following the majority of the parents despite not thinking that the prices are reasonable of mini world, which indicates that she's doing it just for their approval, indicating that she's showing NSI. Explain it that way. So keep linking it back to what you've explained NSI is. Keep using Julie's name, keep using words from the situation. So you could say NSI, again I'm just writing briefly, full answers are available below. NSI is being shown by Julie because despite thinking, or despite privately or truly believing, I forgot to discuss about private and public acceptance, but you know what that is. NSI motivates public acceptance while privately having a different view, whereas ISI motivates changing one's private view also. So in Julie's case, despite having private acceptance for the reasonable kids world, like she feels that is more affordable, she still decides to go with mini world out of clearly desire for approval or fear of rejection from the majority of parents. So that is how we are seeing NSI, like explain it thoroughly to get good marks in AO2. Same pattern you have to follow to explain what Anthony is doing. Anthony, he's not just doing public acceptance, he's doing both private and public acceptance. He has changed his private acceptance. After listening to what the parents have to say, he actually believes that mini world is better for his kids rather than Kids Cave. And how we confirm that, how we are doubly sure that he's doing it because he truly believes in it. Because even when the parents are not around, that time also he takes his children to mini world. So that indicates that he's doing it out of ISI. Finally, coming to AO3, in these type of questions, 16 markers with AO2, unlike those which have no AO2, the 6 marks which go into, the 4 marks which go into AO2, they have been deducted from AO3, meaning that AO3 usually it is for 10 marks in a 16 marker. In these type of questions, it's reduced to 6 marks. For a 10 mark AO3, we tend to give 4 points. Again, if you want to know exactly how to write, you can see my previous video. Here 2 points are enough. When it is for 6 marks, just you could preferably, to balance out, take one strength and one weakness. And, just elaborate in peel format on each. Preferably if you can give a counterpoint somewhere or a supporting study somewhere, that's even better. So 2 solid points you can write for AO3. That's all that's required, provided you're going into the depth approach, and that's required to get full 16. If you're going for a breadth approach, then you can give 3 points also, might not help you to get full 16 marks. For a strength, again, let's just brainstorm the possible strengths first. Any supporting study for NSI, like say the ASHES study, if you haven't taken in AO1, you can take it, otherwise it tends to overlap. You could give a critique of the ASHES study. If you've already given it in AO1 and AO3, how you could give a critique is show some strengths of that study. It is a classical study, highly controlled, very standardized, a proper lab experiment that manipulated the IV, which helped to show like a definitive relationship between NSI and conformity. So that way you can, elaborate and explain. Okay, other possible strengths can come from issues or debates or general strengths also. Does not have to be from the studies only. So you could have like definitely NSI, ISI both have real world application. They help to understand real world situations. You could take any conforming situations in real life again, big events that have occurred of conformity in the world, or smaller events which take place day to day life. You could give those, and you can say they explain through NSI. Like previously, I'd given an example when people travel abroad and there they follow the norms of that culture out of ISI. So it helps to understand situations like these. Or just don't confuse with obedience. A lot of students then they give examples of Nazi Germany and Jews and all. That is for obedience. That is not for conformity. So don't mix up things. And other possibilities are in terms of strengths. Also, the way I gave the example critique, you could give a strength of Ash. I also mean it for Genis. I don't mean only for Ash's study. So even for that study, it was they had like properly manipulated the IV, and it was very standardized the way they made participants do group discussions and also definitely for that also you could take similar strength of it being like a very controlled study. So means these points which I'm giving for strengths, I just want to make it clear it's applicable to both NSI and ISI. Other possibilities of strengths of these explanations are that they are like very relevant even in present times, though they are very outdated explanations. They are very good temporal validity. You could give any current life examples, like if you take social media examples today, if any trend starts coming up on Twitter, lots of people, or any social media platform, lots of people will start following that trend by making similar reels, videos, posting those type of photographs, showing that strong tendency to conform. And depending on which example you're giving, whether it's ambiguous, unambiguous situation. Say, if, for example, if you take ambiguous situations, people don't know what is happening. So they might end up spreading fake news just because they want to be correct. They see some portal on which some news is presented and they just share that. And then the majority ends up sharing that and everyone is copying and sharing. So how ISI or desire to be right can result in fake news, fake information being spread. So these explanations can explain these type of things also, what is happening with modern technology. So that is what gives it temporal validity. I'm sure you can think of number of other strengths. So any other strength you can give here, as long as you can explain it well, thoroughly, with context and reasoning. That is in the Peel format. Then we have weaknesses. In terms of weaknesses, again you could give critiques of any of the studies. This time from a weakness point of view. Say Ash's study, for example, was representative only of males, so generalizability is questionable, or it was done only in one culture. So we don't know whether it will generalize to collectivist cultures where conformity might be higher. Similar points you can give for Genesis study. So any critique of the studies in terms of their methodology or in terms of these issues like culture and gender, those you could give. You could also give weaknesses in terms of they are very reductionist explanations. Like NSI, I say not the only possibilities why people conform. There can be other motivations also. Like these are generally about ambiguity, unambiguity, or approval desire or correctness desire. But people could also be conforming just because it is deep ingrained into their mind as they grow up out of socialization or parenting. That is why they might be conforming, not for any other reasons. Another possibility is the demarcation between the two explanations themselves. Like if you go to contrast them, there might be a very thin line separating the two explanations. So NSI, ISI might not be as mutually exclusive as they seem. They might really overlap with each other. So definitely, that can be a very strong point to give. I would recommend giving that point, and you can back it up with any example. So in real life, say someone is following the queue, as simple as that. It's very difficult to figure out, are they following it because of NSI, because they're afraid that other people will retaliate and backlash if they don't follow the queue, or is it because of ISI? They feel that is the right thing to do. And what happens is when we go to investigate, because after all they're depending on private and public acceptance. So if we go to actually ask people why they're standing in the queue, out of social desirability, they wouldn't admit that they're doing it just because they are afraid of others. They would likely say that they are doing it because they believe it is the right thing to do. So methodologically, also research wise, becomes very difficult to figure out why people are showing conformity. So to research upon these explanations is very challenging. Again, many other possible points are there. So many reference sources. There must be so many points that you are learning. Any point which you can explain well, you could give here. So very quickly, just to complete the outline, I would say for the strength of these explanations, I would critique studies like Ash and Jennis. They were highly standardized and controlled. And they were highly standardized and controlled. That's why the findings that we've obtained from them, the support that they have given for NSISI is highly credible. It gives credibility to the explanations. Again, if you want to see fully how to write, please download the model answers. In terms of weakness, I would suggest giving the difficulty in methodology of research done in this area because of the overlap between NSI and ISI in observation. When we go to observe, it becomes very difficult to say why someone is motivated to conform, and then when we go to investigate, there are methodological challenges. Okay, so this is one possible structure that you could give for this 16 marker. Your structure has to be like this only. Content could be different from what I have covered. So just write your own answer and check whether it's following more or less what is there here. One possibility in the structure is many students like to integrate AO1 and AO2. You can do that. Why I keep it separate is because more clarity, and this way students make sure they cover 6 marks for AO1 and justify 4 marks for AO2. Many students, when they keep on merging AO1 and AO2, like they've given definition of NSI, link it to Julie. One, they don't engage with the STEM as much as I explained for AO2. That becomes a problem. Second thing is, then they don't justify the marks. So much overlap is there that they end up giving only what is worth, say, 1 or 2 marks for AO2 and 2 or 3 marks for AO1. They write like a big paragraph. They feel they've done enough to justify both. They don't really think whether they're giving as many unique points as is needed to justify, because they're going on switching between AO1 and AO2. They're not really keeping track of whether they're justifying the marks allotted for each assessment objective. So I would strongly recommend you follow separate structure for AO1, AO2, but if you're already used to writing them together, then make sure that you meet the targets for both. Okay, now let's move on to the memory section. In memory, first an MCQ has been given. MCQs, there's nothing much to say in the way of how you should answer them, except for if you don't know what the answer is, you can use the elimination method, which I'll demonstrate now. Let's read the question first. Which two of the following statements about types of long-term memory are true? So statements are given, and one important thing is to note the word to. Although it will seem obvious, many students are in such a rush to answer that they don't read carefully. And despite it being written explicitly, like you have to mark two, they end up just marking one. So make sure that you write two. You mark two. Second thing is, like I said, if you don't know the answers, use the elimination method. Most of you straight away you'll be able to identify which are the right answers. I will go over it alternative by alternative to show you how to think about which might be the wrong possibilities and just move them away so that you can be sure that the ones which you are marking are correct. Okay, so what they have asked us here is which are true for long-term memory. Sometimes they can also say not true or false. So just make sure to read that wording also correctly. The first they've said episodic memories are referred to as action memories. That is wrong because by definition we know it's the procedural memories which are action memories. Action memories means literally which help us to perform some action. So that's not episodic. So we know this cannot be the right answer. Next is episodic memories do not require information about facts to be stored. Not true, though they are about episodes or events of life, but of course, some facts automatically get registered with events. For example, if I remember my birthday party and what happened in it, I remember some aunts came, some uncles came. So, factually, also, I remember which were the aunts and uncles who came in the birthday party. So, again, not very true because some facts inevitably get added up to episodic memory, though it's not primarily factual memory, that's semantic. But still, we can't say that it's totally exclusive of facts. Next is procedural memories are often stored below the level of conscious awareness. Yes, this is right. Because we know when it comes to performing actions initially when we learn them, like if we take a simple example like walking, it takes a lot of deliberate conscious effort to walk. But after some time, it becomes automatic. Automatic means what? That we don't have to think about it consciously. So it is definitely below conscious awareness. Next is semantic memories are more difficult to describe than procedural memories. We know procedural memories are the most difficult to describe because they've become automatic and because they relate to actions. It's easier to demonstrate them than to, uh, you know, define it or put it verbally instruct someone how to do something. Whereas semantic memories are just about facts. So it's very easy to spell out facts to somebody or tell them what are the facts. So it's procedural memory which is difficult to describe compared to semantic, not the other way around. So this statement is wrong. Semantic memories include knowing the rules of football. Yes, because rules of football are facts, so they're general world knowledge. So definitely they are included in semantic memory. What you have to do in the paper is just shade C and D, C and E, which are the right options. That's all you're required to do. MCQs can be deceptively simple, like you saw. Only if it looks like, oh, it's an MCQ, must be easy to score. Only if you've learned properly, you know all the three types of long term memory correctly, like you know conceptually, then only you're able to answer. Next is outline the procedure and of findings of one study in which coding in memory was investigating. This is outline. So it is completely AO1. You just have to define what you have to do. Learned in the book, like you just have to describe that. Procedure and or findings, they've left it to you. You want to give only the procedure, you can give findings only, you could give. Don't give aim, conclusion, unnecessary sections, don't give. Also because it is worth only 4 marks. You cannot write about the study very elaboratively. It will become excessive for 4 marks. So make sure that you are giving only as much as is justified for 4 marks, meaning you give key points from the procedure. I've explained in previous video when it comes to procedure. Rather than who were the participants, which ethnicity they came from, what was their age, those things are secondary. What was the task that they had to do? Focus on that when you have very limited marks and you have to give the procedure. Same way in the results. What is the key thing you're coming to know about coding in whichever type of memory you're selecting? Take that. Don't you know sorry don't stray away and give secondary type of results. These many men remembered, these many women remembered. Right now they're not asking about gender differences, for example. So be as relevant as possible when you have only 2 or 4 marks. Let's think about which studies we could talk about in this. One very common mistake is to take Sperling study in this. Sperling study is about sensory memory, but it is about the uh, capacity of sensory memory, how many letters could be held. That is what he investigated in iconic memory. So it's definitely not about coding. It's about, like I said, capacity. So make sure you take a study about coding. I think Badley will be the most popular one, the full list study. I would strongly recommend taking it. Besides, you could take any study which has shown semantic coding in LTM, not coming to my mind right now, like this one is there badly, but which has exclusively taken only semantic memory in LTM. You could take any study of that type. Or if you want to take for sensory memory per se, coding, then any study which has shown that there is auditory coding. Like I remember Tressman studies there, though not very popular, dual hearing task, in which on when they're hearing on headphones in one ear some different information is being given and in another ear different information then it clashes with each other. That one you can get for sensory memory. And yes, so procedure and or findings, it's up to you. You want to give only the findings, only procedure? I would recommend just take one study and give both a little bit of the procedure, little bit of the findings, like main procedure, main findings, just makes things easier. So if we take Badley and Hitch, also, I'm not repeating, we've already seen justify 4 marks, give 4 unique points. If we take the Badley study, like I said, you don't have to give aim and all, but just mention that this is the study which you're giving. Don't abruptly begin with the procedure. Participants were shown list, just name Badley. Just say which coding in which stores he was seeing. It's not giving the aim, it's just signposting and telling the examiner which study you're talking about. So, Badley studied coding in STM and LTM. Now, he showed participants 4 lists of words which were either like acoustically similar, dissimilar, and semantically similar, dissimilar. Now, what he found was upon immediate recall, there was confusion in the acoustically similar list. Participants were less accurate in recalling that. And for the 20 minutes later, when he said to do recall, then semantically similar list was where participants showed less accuracy. So you can see I've given the procedure also, I've given the result also. These will count as 2 results because one is for STM, one is for LTM. Also the description of list will be counted separately because acoustically similar, dissimilar was to test coding in STM and semantically similar, dissimilar was to test coding in LTM. So definitely I'm covering 4 unique points. If instead you want to give only the procedure, then describe this part, also add to it what they were assessing exactly, like participants had to do free recall of the words, so just explain that part then to elaborate further. If you just want to give the findings, then you can I think giving findings by itself is difficult, but if you're doing that, so just say that this is what was found and describe a little of what was found for the dissimilar list also to elaborate for 4 marks on the findings. Don't get into the conclusion though because they haven't asked, so don't try to interpret and explain why this is happening. Strictly they've asked you procedure and findings, so aims and conclusions will not be credit worthy. Next is one explanation of forgetting is retrieval failure. Suggest one revision strategy based on retrieval failure that could be used to improve performance in exam and justify your answer. This is like an AO3 question. uh, Because application to everyday life or practical usefulness is what is being asked for. They want you to show how exam performance can be improved. Uh, Also, they want you to justify the answer. Means further, they want you to give a strength or explain like how it is useful. Very simple 2 marker. When it comes to retrieval failure, of course, it will do with cues of encoding. You could talk about contextual cues or you could talk about state dependent cues also. The key thing is to talk about some cues. Just to remember, retrieval failure is about not being able to remember because cues are not available at the time of recalling information. When it comes to revising on the exam, make sure you make it very specific to this scenario. Don't give general. So again, some students will write it as, you know, Q should be there to remember. First of all, they don't give a particular example of what Q can be there. So there you lose marks. Also, you know, the room should be the same. How it should be the same. Give some, concrete or explicit example of this is how it should be the same. This is what an exam hall looks like, and this is what the room should be like where revision is being done. Explain it that directly to get full marks. So what I would suggest is, if you take contextual cues, for example, so you could begin with the first statement, like contextual cue could be used. In exam halls, if you see, there are desks and benches. You could even talk about, if you want, the blackboard, or a lot of silences there, you could talk about that. So even when revision is being done, of course, a desk and bench shouldn't be there in the house, but it should be done at a desk and chair at least, because that would serve as a contextual cue to remember. Alternatively, you could say that silence should be there around, absolute silence. That would serve as a cue. If you talk about internal cues, state dependent cues, instead, you could talk about keeping mobile phones away so that there's no distraction. So, no distractedness with anything, focusing only on the paper. So, mental alertness could be the cue, because that is the type of alertness which would be there in the exam hall. Or not eating, drinking, not consuming anything at the time of writing for revision, or learning for revision. Again, to match the exam hall, because there is no eating, drinking, or anything that is happening there. Next is another explanation for forgetting is interference. Evaluate the interference explanation for forgetting. This is an evaluate command term. This time it is for 6 marks. If you look at the memory section which we just did, in that AO3 question, sorry, that essay question 16 marker was with AO3. That AO3 was also for 6 marks. So you can rewind a little and see that again, whatever rules I had given there for evaluation, the same will apply here, because this also amounts to AO3 is for 6 marks. So preferably one strength, one weakness, each in Peel format to justify 6 marks. Let's brainstorm what are the possible strengths for forgetting interference. It could be a superior definition to decay. Because either you could take up the methodological points which we've taken, that decay is very difficult to test empirically, because people do activities all the time. So this one seems more plausible and reasonable, that activities that we do will keep interfering with information we have acquired previously. So it's a better definition. You could contrast with any other definition also if it comes to your mind. Do I think it's weaker than the retrieval cue explanation, retrieval failure? So that would go into a weakness. Other strengths, definitely it helps to understand memory in the real world. It could be overlapping with this one only. So depends how you phrase it. In the sense that you could give some real life example also. Say a student is studying something and then they learn another subject to cram up, and then they forget what they'd learned in the first subject. So retroactive interference could be taking place. So it helps to understand memory in the real world. Other strengths could be like it does help in application in that sense, like not only explaining phenomena but practical usefulness. For example, students could learn not to learn multiple subjects in the same day, or to take long pauses between learning two different subjects, so that one does not interfere with the other. Or you could give any study support. In fact, you could give study support from non-academic type of studies also. Like, I remember this advertisement studies there, if you have learned about it, that when people see multiple advertisements in succession, they forget about the ones they've seen earlier or later because of the other ones that they've seen. So for advertisers, that study shows that interference could be the reason why people are not remembering about their products despite endorsing them. Okay, or any other strengths that you have learned about, just write elaborately with context and reasoning. When it comes to weaknesses for interference, some explanations could be better than interference, like retrieval failure. The Tulving and Sotka study you could give for this one. In Tulving and Sotka, they have shown how when people are given cues, they do end up remembering, even though it appears initially that they've forgotten things because of interference, then they end up remembering things. So definitely there are better explanations. Or the Kane and Engel study you could give for support. Kane and Engel was about how people who have better working memory, they don't show that much interference. So interference could be contingent on working memory, which means that confounding is possible or individual differences are possible. So that's a weakness. Other weaknesses is it is deterministic again if we go by issues and debates. The assumption is that a person will just forget because some material is coming on the way. They cannot use their free will to use better strategies and remember things. And definitely, it could also be reductionist in the sense that it is very information specific. Like, not for all types of information, interference would be the correct explanation for forgetting. Depends what type of forgetting is taking place. In some cases, decay might be a better explanation, say for very long back memories which are there. Maybe decay is a more plausible explanation. Or, like we saw previously, retrieval failure might be a better explanation under stressful or anxiety provoking situations, because people haven't actually forgotten, it's just that out of stress they are unable to remember at the moment. So, very quickly to make an outline, if I take this trend that it is superior to decay as an explanation, how I would give context and reasoning for that. Okay, because as I mentioned, decay is very implausible in real life. There are too many activities that we do, so merely out of decay we forget things. It's very difficult, at least, to establish in studies that trace theory which is there, that some trace is there which fades away, very difficult to establish. But interference makes a lot of sense, because we do so many activities in the day and we learn so many different types of things, like we're exposed to so much different information, even unwittingly, that it is possible that because of that information we are forgetting things. In terms of weakness, like I said, let's take any one. Maybe let's take that retrieval failure could be a better explanation. I would support it by taking Tulving and Sotka study, in which they asked participants to remember many lists of words, and it appeared that there was retroactive and proactive interference both taking place. But when they gave them cues of names of categories of words that they had learned, they were able to retrieve, indicating that actually it was cue failure and it was not interference based forgetting in their memory. Okay. In memory, this time they haven't included a 16 marker or an 8 marker for that matter, only short questions. So I feel it's been better to score on memory. The next one, in fact, very simple, very expected and direct question if you've been practicing. I remember covering in one of my recent videos, must be for the 2024 paper also. In an investigation into accuracy of eyewitness testimony, 40 participants were shown the same film of a car crash. Following the film, they were randomly allocated to one of two conditions. Each participant was interviewed separately and was asked one critical question. In condition A, 20 participants were asked, "Did you see the list of traffic lights? Yes or no?" In condition B, the other 20 were asked, "Did you see a set of traffic lights? Yes or no?" There was no set of traffic lights in the film. The researcher chose to use a chi-squared statistical test to see whether there was a significant difference in responses to critical questions in the two conditions. Explain three reasons for this choice with reference to this investigation. Okay, how do you justify the use of any significance test? Again, if you want to see more elaborately, you can see in my previous video. We look at firstly whether differences have been assessed or correlation has been assessed. Now, chi-squared is suitable to both, but chi-squared for differences particularly seems to be relevant to this scenario. So we can begin with differences have been assessed and therefore chi-squared has been used. Just make sure to engage with the STEM. Research methods type of questions are the AO2 questions. So, when you say differences are being assessed with respect to what or in which conditions, mention that. If you just say differences are being assessed, so chi-squared is suitable, only that won't get you marks. Then you're writing a very AO1 type of answer. Make it AO2. I'm just in a little rush. I need to get done with this video, so I'm apologetic. I cannot cover in as much depth as I was doing the previous questions, but please understand that the same principles which I've explained earlier apply here also. So it's an explain command term, a situation is given, it's AO2. So make sure you're applying every point to the situation. Here they have measured differences in terms of two conditions, different types of questions have been asked. One is asked a leading question, one is asked a not leading question. So which group has shown more accuracy in reporting their memory? That's why chi-squared is suitable. Another, you have to see for any statistical test, the criterion is which type of data has been collected. For chi-squared, it has to be nominal or categorical data. In this case, what is the nominal data? They're just counting the frequency of people who say yes or no. So there are two categories of answers possible, yes, no, they're just counting the frequency. How many are saying yes, how many are saying no. So that way also it gets justified. And then finally, of course, the design, we have to see its differences, meaning it is experiment. So is it independent groups design or repeated measures design? Chi-squared is suitable for independent groups, and it is indeed independent groups design, because you can see that there are two different sets of participants who are hearing either the misleading or leading questions. It's not like the same set of participants are hearing both types of questions. Okay, so those three reasons are the ones which you have to give for using chi-squared. Don't unnecessarily give, why you're not using Mann Whiteley or why you're not using Wilcoxon. Not required. That is one mistake. Second mistake, like I told you, is not to engage with the step. 6 marks very clearly, reason, 1 mark, linking, 1 mark. So like that, you do it thrice, you get 6 marks. Next question is, the researcher found that significantly more participants in condition A responded yes compared to condition B. Use your knowledge of research into one factor that affects eyewitness testimony to explain this finding. This is very obvious. When we are reading the situation only, we can understand that the nature of the questions is different. The wording of the questions is different. And what is the difference in the wording? Did you see the set of traffic lights? That is what one group is asked. And did you see a set of traffic lights? That's what another group is asked. When we tell someone, did you see the set? We are giving a very definitive type of implication that they were there. Did you see it or not? And when we give a set, it is indefinitely asking the person, did you see anything like that or not? We are not suggesting that it was there. A leading question by definition is implicative or suggestive, where we tell the person that this is what we are expecting to hear from you. So where we say, did you see those set of lights, it becomes leading. And here where you can see a set of lights, it is not leading. So leading question is the factor here which is influencing eyewitness testimony, and that's what we need to explain. In terms of assessment objectives, you can think of this question as partially it is AO1 because you do have to explain the factor a little, but mostly it is AO2. It will be split 2 marks. Mostly it's AO2 because they want to see can you relate it to this scenario or not. First thing, name the point explicitly, like name the factor leading question. So say leading question is influencing eyewitness testimony. Next, just explain it in one line, definition with good terminology. Any question that is implicative in terms of what answer is expected from the eyewitness. And then engage with the stem explicitly, like I've told you, use because, use wording, match the definition to what is given in the stem to explain. So we say it is an implicative question when participants are asked about the set of traffic lights. It is being implied. We just said in the definition it is implicative. It is being implied that there was indeed a set of traffic lights. And that is why. What else they have told you in the STEM, you have to engage with everything. They are telling you that more participants in condition A responded yes. So that's why, because they have been misled by the question. That is why more of them are in condition A, have responded yes. Okay, so take it through, like take it completely. So this is what has misled them, and it's apparent in this particular result which has been found. Like take it from start to finish. Okay, so that is what I have to offer in this video. I have explained to you social influence and memory, how to approach the questions. I hope these frameworks will help you to write your answers. Always write your answers for practice. Don't take it for granted that I'm just seeing something or I'm reading something, so of course I'll be able to write in the paper. You will not be able to write good answers and get A and A stars till you actually practice writing, and preferably get that writing assessed and get feedback from a qualified tutor. Okay, so make sure you're practicing correctly to score your high grades. And I will make the parts on attachment and psychopathology very soon and upload them. That's it for this video. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.